So we just wanted to just have this as a candid discussion. We're very fortunate for the panelists who came to join us from both the UNC and NC State. Wide variety of folks coming in different parts of their career, both as grad student and faculty as well. So I will punt it over to Leslie, who is going to be our moderator for the first panel. Leslie is the career director there at NC State. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you my school.
That's okay.
NC State Computer Science, and has over 20 years of experience working with grad students and the tech field specifically. So we're really glad to have her today as not only as a partner in this event, but also to be our moderator. So I'll let you take it over, and I'm going to minimize my screen.
Thank you, Rosaria. I really have enjoyed working with you all. Pairing up with our colleagues at UNC has been wonderful for this. So thank you for inviting us to join. As Rosaria mentioned, I'm Leslie. I'm really excited to be moderating this first panel, which features wonderful graduate students from our programs, both at NC State and UNC. And we thought we would give everybody a minute just at the beginning to introduce themselves and give you an idea of who they are, where they're from, and what area they study. So we're going to go down the list, and I guess, Alex, you're an A, so let's start with you, if you don't mind.
Great.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's all right. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great, awesome. So hi, my name is Alex Milliken, and I'm a PhD student at the Game to Learn lab. You can, other corner. You can see in my corner here. I'm from NC State. I'm actually in my 6th year of my PhD, and my research focuses on redesigning how teachers learn, teach, and assess block-based languages in their computer science classrooms.
Thank you. Let's see, next, Catherine.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Nemitz. I am currently a 6th year student at UNC, and I work on real-time systems. These are systems that have deadlines as part of, so time constraints as part of system correctness, proving that these deadlines will always be met. So just a little bit about my path to where I am. I actually did my undergrad at UNC and then did the BSMS program, which made me realize that I was interested in continuing to pursue research and moving on from there. So.
Thank you very much. Chris, you're next.
Thanks. My name is Chris Brown. I'm a PhD student at North Carolina State University. Also in my 6th year in the program, I completed my undergraduate degree at Duke, and I'm currently doing research exploring how to improve developer behavior using behavioral science concepts, specifically nudge theory, to help developers make better decisions in their work.
Thank you, Chris. And then Peter.
Cool. Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm a 2nd year PhD student now at UNC. I work in natural language processing and machine learning, very interested in interpretable machine learning and interpretable deep learning and how they're used in NLP specifically too. So I did my undergrad at Duke in statistics and just moved down the road since.
That's great. Couple that have studied within the triangle for a while now, so that's great. Good to see the combination of schools here. And Tanya, you're last, but not least for sure.
Yeah, hi. My name is Tanya Amert. I'm a 6th year PhD student at UNC, and I also work in real-time systems. My focus area is on systems that use GPUs, so graphics processing units, for systems like self-driving cars, and looking at how to do that safely. And I did my undergrad at MIT, and then I went to Microsoft for a couple of years. And so I had a little bit of time in between undergrad and my PhD program.
That's wonderful. Good to hear from all of you. I look forward to hearing all your answers to the questions tonight, as I'm sure all of our participants. We are well into the discussion here. So let's start with what factors were really important to you when you were deciding between graduate schools. You probably had a few that you were thinking about. So please, if you just want to chime in with that, whomever, and we'll take turns if multiple people want to answer.
I will chime in first and just say that I actually only applied to one. So
Oh, great. Good for
don't
you,
wait.
Alex.
Don't wait for me.
I can go.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
For me, there were a few things. First, is it a place that you would want to live? So you'd have to spend like 4 to 5, or in my case, 6 years of your life in this one place. So Raleigh is a nice place to be, cool city to live in. So obviously you want to be somewhere you can enjoy, have fun, get away from things outside of school. I think another thing is specifically in research, do they have topics you're interested in? So for me, I'm interested in software engineering. I think similar to Tanya, I also took a break in between undergrad and graduate school, then came back to do a PhD. So I was interested in sort of these topics with software engineering. So does the school you're applying to have a research program or professors dedicated to topics you're interested in? Because again, you'll be working on this project for a long time and you want to make sure it's something you like. So you aren't like bored, or you don't actually like, I don't know, end up with a project you don't like, which leads to other issues.
Very true.
Yeah, my experience was similar to Chris. It was a lot about where do I want to live and what research do I want to do. I had 3 choices, and UNC was the best balance of research, but also feeling like I would have some work-life balance. And we also knew that we wanted to get a house, and it's an area with reasonably affordable houses. And so that was something that was important to us, to be able to have a house and still be pretty close to campus.
Great. Anybody else? Alex, tell me why you only applied to one place. That was an interesting follow-up I wanted to ask.
I did what's called an REU, or research experience for an undergrad. Between my summers, between my junior and senior year, I went to Xavier University, which doesn't have research. And so I found NC State by looking up like interesting projects to do an REU. And I actually really enjoyed the lab. It was the Game to Learn lab. And that's kind of an internship for grad schools. And that's when my advisor, Dr. Barnes, said, hey, I want you to be my student. I want you to come to grad school. So that is how that happened for me. So I only applied to one because I enjoyed the atmosphere. It's kind of a nice taste of, what would I be doing? Who are the people I'd be around?
Did anybody else do undergrad research, the REU program that Alex mentioned? No. That's a great way. I would definitely recommend that for undergraduate students to take a look and try to find those programs. It's a great way to explore PhD study for sure. I'll move on unless somebody else wants to answer the first question. Do you now do a lot of research in your work as a PhD student? I'm going to guess that answer is yes. And then do you do teaching? Is it both, a combination, just kind of pulling all that together? I know students would like to have a sense of what's your day like, and is there a lot of variation with that? And is there variation then between what you do as a PhD student and what some of your peers are doing? What's that balance?
So I'd be happy to go. I do mostly research. I actually haven't done any teaching at all for summer or during the year. I have been a TA a couple of times, a teacher assistant, because we have such large classes. And sometimes the professor's out of town, so I would have to guest lecture or something along those lines. My day-to-day, I get up at some point. Sometimes I get up early, sometimes I don't. And then I get on my computer. Now that it's COVID, it's kind of weird. I just kind of roll over onto my computer, figure out what my schedule is. If it's in a couple hours, maybe I'll have a relaxing. If it's like, oh no, it's in 5 minutes, then I get up, get on my computer. But at my 6th year, I'm pretty much doing my own stuff. I do collaborate a lot. I have 15 other people in my lab, which is a quite big lab for computer science. But I do have check-ins with younger people. So I'm mentoring kind of a tiered program within our lab. And I know when I was a younger year, I would go into my lab because it wasn't COVID, and I would kind of check in to see what people are doing, and then I'd go to classes because I had classes then as well. So
Thank you.
I'll echo part of that is my experience of what my day-to-days looked like has changed a lot over the course of the PhD. So the first couple of years were very focused on taking required classes and balancing doing that coursework with making progress on research. And as it has moved, I've moved, through the years, it has switched to being primarily working on research. At the same time, there is some like rhythm and structure now instead of being given by, courses running in the defined semesters. It's based on what project I'm working on. We're typically aiming for a specific deadline for a conference or something like that. And so there is still this changing, even though I have this breadth of dissertation research, it comes in chunks of projects. And so throughout the course, I've been working on different projects.
That's great. Thank you.
One other thing that's worth mentioning, so I've had the opportunity to teach twice actually, and the first one kind of fell into my lap, and the second one I did a bit more work to make happen. So I was able to teach a course at UNC during one of the semesters, and that was a really fun experience, although it was a lot of work because I was also taking a class and attempting to do research at the same time, and those didn't all happen. I ended up really not doing any research so that I could at least do well in the class. And then I also took a short time to teach over the winter term this past winter at a different school. And part of the reason for that is I'm intending to go to a teaching focused faculty position next year. And so that's leading towards that career path. I think there's at least a handful of people I know who have taught at UNC, but most grad students tend not to teach at UNC at least.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll chip in too. So even though I'm only in my second year, since the beginning, and this holds true for a lot of machine learning students, the primary focus has always been research for me and my cohort. So even though we are still taking classes like first years, we're definitely spending still almost all of our time just still like working on primary research projects we have. So yeah, I mean, sometimes the exact balance, shifts from student to student and lab to lab between research and classes over time. One other thing that I've really enjoyed is like mentoring undergrad research assistants. Our lab has a few undergrad RAs who work with us during the semester or over the summer sometimes. And it's, a nice new experience to have. Like as you build up, more expertise over the course of doing projects, like it's a fun and really worthwhile and rewarding exercise to work with a younger student and help them. Sometimes like they'll help you with a project, and then like 6 months later, like they're taking the lead on something, and you're just kind of guiding them. That's really cool too.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that happen. I'm sure. Chris, you want to chime in with any of that? Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, just off what Peter said, that also really helps sometimes move your research forward depending on what you're doing, because sometimes they need to do projects. So at NC State, we have, it's called CSC 499, and it's a class for them to be able to do independent research projects or just independent projects where some of them get to do development, and that can help move along your stuff while you're also doing research. So you're not balancing as many things. So that's also a really great opportunity. I've mentored over 40 now, so it's pretty great. I like that you brought that up, Peter.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so for me, mostly research again, as everyone else said. I think it does depend on student preferences though. So I was able to teach a class over the summer, and I was the instructor for the Intro to Java class at NC State. So a lot of times schools will have opportunities for graduate students and PhD students to teach if that's something they're interested in. And then like others have said, there are other ways to teach too. So you could mentor undergraduate students, you could run a workshop for an outreach group or anything like that. So there are a lot of ways to actually get teaching experience if that's what you're interested in.
I was going to mention in the Discord at the end, one of our other PhD students that's joining for that conversation is Adam from NC State, and he has taught some classes at NC State too. So if you've got more questions about that later, he'd be happy to talk with you about it, because that's definitely his strong interest area. So we'll learn more about that. Thank you for sending questions through the Q&A. I noticed Alex was responding via text to a question about how you determined your research area, and I'm sure that is a question that many of you have. So, if you all could just, think back to how you decided which lab or research area you wanted to go into. I know, me as an undergrad, I might not have even known what people were talking about when we kept saying lab. So maybe just to talk a little bit about that and how you decided not only what research area, but lab you wanted to go into. Not everybody at once.
So I actually changed advisors after coming to UNC. I came to UNC for a very specific advisor with a not with a project, but with a research area that I was really interested in. And it was primarily an interest based out of an elective course that I took in undergrad. And I really, really enjoyed that elective. And so I kind of kept following along and trying to find other classes at other schools that I could see what projects they had for their versions of it. But when I got here, after a couple of semesters, I realized it wasn't a very good fit, both in terms of the advisor and the projects. It just wasn't lining up for me. And so actually the way that I decided a lab was, it turns out to be Catherine's lab. I went to Catherine and I asked her if she felt like it was a good lab culture. And if the advisor gave constructive feedback, if the projects were things that students were interested in and also were equipped to do. And to all of those, she said yes. And so I went to my now advisor and asked if he had availability for another student. So for me, it was much more about a good personality fit and culture, as opposed to just focusing on the research area.
I agree with that a lot. So I mentioned I did an REU, and that's how I luckily found CS education. And I don't think I would have liked it as much if I didn't like the culture. Like I said, there are 15 people in this lab or group of people, which is quite large. I think typically at our school, maybe it's like 4 to 6. So having 15 people in your lab, that means that your advisor is always busy. And so that's oh, it's hard to get time in with your advisor. But what that also means is that you have supports on who's taken this class before. Can someone point me in the right direction for this? I need help. Or you getting to do what Peter mentioned, mentoring. You get to mentor the new ones that come in, and you get to pass on that information that you have. I had to dig down deep to figure out what I was passionate for, and I knew I just wanted to help people. And so I feel like for me, that could have just fit into a lot of different chunks, but CS education allowed for me to do it in a way that I really enjoyed it as well, and I enjoyed the people I was working with. So I really agree with Tanya, because it's really important to get along with who you're working with, because you're there for a while.
Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
I can describe a little bit of, so in undergrad, the process I went through was becoming interested in AI and machine learning, and then just trying 3 or 4 different short-term research positions and with some professor or with some lab group over the course of 2 years, and just trying one after the other and figuring out, okay, I did one thing in this sub area, and that was fun, but I want to do it again. And so you try another sub area and another sub area, and over time it's slow, but over time you start to narrow it down a little bit. And then unsurprisingly, I mean, it's common even as a grad student, your interests will continue to change a little bit. So it's useful to, and in terms of picking a school, so and we've talked a lot about advisor fit already, and it really is vital to have a really strong fit with your advisor up front that you're looking for, or for there to be some potential advisor with a really strong fit. But it's also good to select for like a place that has like a really good second or third option for you that you might pivot to. And it's nice if some of these when the labs are a little larger, typically they're a little more flexible in like the areas that they're going to entertain, like what the advisors will advise. And so when your interests start to change a little bit, like, you know, it all still works out when you're in a setting like this. So those are also things to select for.
That's an excellent point. Go ahead, Catherine.
My approach was definitely less methodical than that. So I didn't really get involved in research as an undergraduate student, which is part of why I chose to do, I think I mentioned this previously, I chose to do the BSMS program. So stay an extra year or two to get the master's. And so the summer between finishing my bachelor's and starting the master's program, that summer I contacted one of the professors that I'd taken his class. I thought the things sounded interesting, and I just asked, can I work with you through the summer? I didn't really know what project I was signing up for when I did that. And so I think for me, that was really valuable because I didn't feel like I had this breadth of knowledge to decide some other way. You know, the experience that I had was, well, I took this class and I liked it. And so I think that was powerful for me, especially, I mean, it wasn't an RE in the same sense, but still to have a summer to dedicate to doing research, to figure out, is this something that I'm interested in? Kind of doing research as well as the specific topic that I was working on.
Right. Yeah, I think you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, that's what it all comes down to, and whatever experience you have in front of you that you can try something, I think is definitely the good way to go about it. We also have a class at NC State where, and a seminar for first year students where different faculty members will come in and talk to the students about their work. I'm guessing most programs also have something similar to that, just to give you a sense of who all the faculty are and what they're working on, and, you know, ways you might be able to participate in their research. We've had a few more questions that have come in from the chat and from the Q&A, so I do want to mention some of those as well. It sounds like some of the students that are participating tonight, maybe not computer science majors now. Maybe it's a kind of adjacent major, and I wonder if anybody else, you know, could share some perspective on what that was like to maybe move from a major that's close to computer science, but not that exactly, when you came into a PhD. I think that might be Peter. Is that correct?
So I did come from a statistics background.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, so I'm, you know, the CS departments are big, and they cover a lot of, like, even when there's like a small number of faculty, they're going to cover a lot of areas. So I joined a natural language processing lab group where, like, you could get by in the field just having like data structures class. Like, you just need to know how to code, and then beyond that, it's like machine learning. And so you don't need to be a comp sci major. You just definitely don't need to be one to like be in an NLP lab. And I mean, we have a few people who are like co-advised. It's like surprisingly common that people aren't CS majors like that have joined our department. There are a few other like measures of fit for like going on to do research in these areas, besides just having like the you know, major core requirements and that type of thing.
Thank you. What about, I know other students are asking about working before going to grad school. And I know Chris and I think Tanya too both said that you had worked prior to going to grad school. Did you think that was helpful for you, or do you wish you had gone straight through from undergrad without stopping?
Yeah, I can go first. For me, I think it was very helpful. Going back to the question on how did I pick my research area, it was pretty much from my industry experience. So that experience kind of motivated me to pick software engineering and figure out what problems can be solved based on my specific experience working in industry. So I think for me, I'm grateful that I did do it. I think it was a good decision. Maybe not for everyone, but I think in my case, it was good for me to get that experience and then to actually use it to apply to my research now.
Yeah, I would second that. It's something that was incredibly important for me to have done. Some for similar reasons, but also when I graduated undergrad, I didn't really have the capability to grasp large chunks of code. Like I would usually just print out all of the files and highlight them to figure out what was going on. And that doesn't really cut it at Microsoft. You learn how to use IDEs pretty quickly. And so by the time that I actually entered grad school, I was much more confident as a software engineer. And I think that coding ability has had a really big impact on helping me succeed in classes, which I really like taking classes, like maybe more than I should. But it helps the homework go faster and you have more time for research. It also helped that I knew I didn't want to stay in industry. I didn't want to stay in a product team and I wanted to be doing research and eventually realized I wanted to teach. And so it also helped me have a focus. And like when it gets rough in grad school and you're like, why am I still doing this? It's nice to be like, all right, yeah, that's why I'm doing this because I did that and I didn't like it as much. And I was able to pay off my student loans. That's a big plus. It was very, very nice having a little bit of buffer going into grad school.
You made two really good segues for me there, and I'm trying to decide which one to go with. So one thing we want to cover for sure is the finances of graduate school and PhD programs. And I also want to talk about, whether you're interested in academia or industry. So let's start with finances because that's what was the last thing, but we will pivot to talking about the other piece about those career aspirations later. So if you guys could just talk a little bit about that, about the funding of graduate programs, of PhD programs, specifically in computer science, and how all that works for you as a student.
Well, I could start off by saying that it depends. It depends on when you sign up, like you're given a contract that's like, oh, we're going to pay for you and your classes for this many years or something along those lines, or you're definitely going to be paid for this many years. So when I did the RU, they basically said, if they're not paying for you and if they're not paying for your school, don't go. And so that's one thing I want to share here. Another thing that so if you are, at least at NC State, if you are a TA, you are paid, I don't know the number because I haven't been a TA in so many years, but you're paid an amount that if you have a roommate, you can live. You can't pay off student loans though. So, and like, I don't know if someone would be able to pay off a car or anything. I don't think so. I think that pretty much the money came into my account and then it went to food and rent. And that's, I had to budget. When it came to me then transitioning to an RA, if my advisor had a lot of money, I might have been paid a little bit more than a TA was, or something, or maybe I'd get a raise if I was doing really well, or sometimes there were hardships and I'm like, well, I'd rather take less money and I'd rather be able to be an RA and not be a TA than being a TA and having the standard amount of money. So that's how it was. For me, there were low times, but then for the most part, I can live. But it is helpful to have a roommate, to learn how to cook at home so you're not eating out. That just normal kind of budgeting stuff.
Who else wants to chime in with a little different perspective or adding on?
Yeah, I agree with what Alex said. It's definitely a livable expense, not as much as you would make in industry. but I think is still able to pay rent, go out, eat, do things a lot of the times. I think another thing when you're looking at schools and potential advisors to ask for is, do they have funding? So advisors usually have to apply for grants, and that's how they get money from the government or some other organization, and that's how they pay you. So if they have plenty of funding coming in, that's usually a good sign. If they don't, you may want to ensure you can be funded, particularly for the RA and research parts of your graduate school career.
Good points. Go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick points. At UNC, you get paid the same whether you're a TA or an RA or whether you're teaching a class. And it is nice because we have had some raises in the last couple of years, and so that's helpful. I just opened my calculator. I'm making less than a quarter of what I made as a junior software engineer at Microsoft, and I think I made enough this year to pay my husband's taxes, and he's still a software engineer. So it's a very, very big gap, but it is livable. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, which I've now forgotten, and so maybe, I think you can search people on the NSF database to see if they have funding. So if you were curious, there are probably other databases for other agencies like NIH if it's medically related research, but I think you can search the advisor's name and see what kind of funding they currently have or what they've had in the past if you wanted to get a gauge for that.
That's great. That's a great resource. And if you can think of that link later, we can put it on the Discord because I think students would love to be able to go back to that.
One thing on that note, regarding fellowships, there are fellowships you can apply for, like NSF GRFP, National Science Foundation, GRFP Graduate Research Fellowship Program. That will allow you to do research that you want to do without having you having to do what your advisor's doing. So that even allows you to join that advisor that you get along with. And, as long as they're willing to advise it, you can do what you want to do. So there's even things that you can do as juniors or seniors to apply for, or maybe not juniors, but as seniors to apply for to get. And the other thing I wanted to mention, internships. You can do internships over the summer. You do not have to do research over the summer. Lots of people in my lab do research, do industry jobs over the summer. One, that's how they get a job afterwards. Lots of people from my lab lock down SaaS jobs because they do an internship over the summer, they do part-time over the year, and then they graduate and then they're hired, and it's amazing. It's a beautiful little package. A lot of people say that they make more in the 2 to 3 months in the summer than they do for the year. So if you choose to do an internship, that will help buffer your time during the school year if you're nervous about that.
That overlaps with the thing that I wanted to chime in with, was just to consider whether if you're seeing a stipend amount, is that for the school year, or does that include the summers as well? Because there are opportunities maybe outside of what was guaranteed funding when you joined of maybe being able to be paid to do research over the summer too, or do an internship. So those are absolutely things to consider, and especially if you're considering multiple schools, to see what those offers are in the details.
Good points. 2 quick things, and then we'll move on to the next question. Alex was mentioning fellowships you could apply for as an undergrad. Many of your schools have fellowship advising support available to you as an undergraduate student. That'll help you. You write those essays and you can get some help with that. So look for that if that's something that you want to do. The second thing I wanted to share was, and John had mentioned this, he's going to be one of our mentors. He's a faculty member at UNC, that, if you're considering master's degree, many companies will, if you're working for them, pay for you to go back to get a master's degree. So if you are thinking about wanting to just stop or just start, even with the master's degree, you could consider getting that paid for by an employer. So lots of good ways to fund graduate school. It's just kind of depending on you and your interests and the alignment with advisor. Like to pivot to that other transition I was talking about a few minutes ago, and that is what you all plan to do with the PhD after you graduate. You're working really hard right now to make this happen. So share with me what your goals are after graduation.
Why, thank you.
Well, I initially wanted to be in academia and doing research because I love mentoring so much, but I think I need a short break from academia myself because I've gone straight, been in school for a long time. And so I would like to be a user experience researcher. User experience researchers, they might work at a software company and they might do research and understand how well a user enjoys using a piece of software, what things could make it better, what things can make it worse. Like anyone can make an app. Well, a lot of people can make apps nowadays, but what now is determining whether or not they're being used or not is do they actually, or are they what the users want to do? So I'm hoping to be a researcher in industry.
I think for me, I'm currently on the job market now and applying, mostly focusing on academic jobs. So sort of the opposite of what Alex was saying. I think my long-term goal in general is just to do research. I think that's my main aim. I think in the academic setting, it allows you to mentor students. You can teach as well and get experience doing that. So it's more like furthering your own research agenda. So it gives you more flexibility career-wise, not having to do like 9 to 5. You can pick your class times, pick some of the, or somewhat flexible in what you want to teach, what you want to research, depending on funding and your actual institution. But I think just the flexibility is what I would like for an academic position.
Thank you.
I'm also looking at academic positions. And like Chris mentioned, the ability to not just do research, but to teach courses, to advise students, to pass that knowledge on, that is especially rewarding to me. And so that is definitely influencing my decision of what type of career path I'm looking at.
I am also interested in academia, and over the past couple of years, I've realized I don't want to advise PhD research. I really, really enjoy the excitement and energy of undergrads, and so I'm looking at undergrad-focused institutions where I would be a faculty member, and I learned in grad school you can be tenure track at these institutions. So faculty member at a place that only has undergrads, and so I'll be doing teaching and research, and kind of an even mix of both.
Yeah, I'm primarily thinking about like research scientist roles in industry now. I mean, yeah, it seems like there are lots of trade-offs between like being in industry versus being in academia. I haven't done any like research internships yet over the summers, so I'll probably have a better idea after that. But yeah. Anyway, it's like 3 years away at least. So that's what
You can always change your mind, that's for sure. And I think what, the variety of answers you saw, there's so many different things you can do with your PhD. And even if you decide to go in academia, the type of school you choose, or even within an institution, there can be multiple types of faculty roles, as you're going to see in our next panel that's coming up. We have a variety of folks who are maybe more teaching roles or research and teaching blend roles, so even within a single institution. So certainly lots of options for students to consider.
I wanted to mention something really fast, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
I wanted to also share that you don't have to obviously choose one. So like I went in to be academia and I was like, I'm going to be academia. I'm going to teach and that's what I'm going to do. And I gave myself a hard time with it for a while because I'm like, maybe I'll do industry. But there's no reason to give yourself a hard time with it because you're still figuring it out. And I'm hoping to come back and do academia afterwards. There's not a lot of connection between user experience research in academia and industry. In fact, they think they do it different ways. And so that's something that I'm interested in trying to reconnect. So like Leslie said, there's lots of options.
The career counselor is all about options, always, for sure. We're kind of closing in on the time that we have for our panel. So I think the next step for us to share information with the students today is really about what can these students who are thinking about graduate study, how can they be preparing now? And then thinking about the application process. Is there anything that's really important for them to keep in mind as they're applying to graduate programs? So preparation and then the application process. Any tips that you have for them?
I would recommend being passionate in your application letter and not sending a general letter to all of the places, and like doing your research. Show them that you've looked into who's there and who you'd want to be with. But then my biggest recommendation is doing an REU if you can at the university that you're interested in, because it's just like testing the waters. It's just testing it out. So
I would also mention to think about who you're asking to write recommendation letters, because everywhere that I got in was somewhere that my letter writer knew somebody. And I found that to be very interesting. I also, like Alex was saying, I called out, my statement of purpose changed for every school. So the first paragraph of like what interested me in research was the same, but then the second paragraph would go into like why that applied for that specific school and what professors I would want to work with at those schools. And then I restructured every single one based on what I thought the school's focus was in terms of teaching and research and what outreach projects I might be involved in.
Yeah, I would second that. Just finding that thing you're passionate about, what research projects you're interested in. And then from that, just trying to put it into your sort of identity as a researcher. So what would you do to help solve this problem or propel the field of computing forward, specifically in your application? And then once you're in their role as a graduate student, learning the different research techniques, or if you're interested in teaching techniques in order to help propel that forward. So I think the most important thing would be finding what you're interested in and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, it'll be hard to spend too much time looking for like faculty you're interested in working with. You should just spend a lot of time looking for faculty. I spent what I thought was like a ton of time, and then like a few months after applying, I was just like, oh, I just like probably should have applied to this school. Like there were just like a couple interesting people there, and I just like didn't even, I don't know how I missed it, but I did, and that type of thing happens. So it's a big part of the search. It's, looking for people, and you can do that with like Google Scholar. You can do that with like rankings websites. You can do that by like finding a workshop at a conference that is on the topic that you think is so cool, and then just like looking at the submitted papers and like who are the authors. There are plenty of ways to do it, but go ahead and give it a good search.
I would think if you're currently in school too, some of your current faculty might have they might know some people who are doing that type of research or can point you in the right direction. So that could be helpful as well. Catherine.
Peter, did you have something on follow up with?
I would, on that point, whoever is writing your letter will, academia is kind of a small world in many ways. They will know people at the schools. So like I had like a list of schools and people I was interested in, and like my research advisor at the time, I like went to them and showed them the list, and they were like, okay, yes, no, don't work with them, okay, yes, and they just like that really helped me narrow it down a little bit, because they just like know these people and like know their students, and really,
and they know you, right?
Yeah.
Most importantly too.
yes, and they can help match you up, in terms of that.
That sounds great. Yeah. So my application process was different because I was did the BSMS first and then once in the master's program, I was allowed to continue to a PhD. So I had a different experience. And I see that someone asked in the chat about that as well. So this may have changed. It's been a couple of years. But when I was applying to the BSMS, I think there was a short statement of, you know, why am I interested in this? And then similarly to other applications, finding people in the department who were willing to speak to whether I'd be a good fit for that. And so I think this echoes some of the same things that other people have been talking about, is talking with the professors that you've taken classes from and seeing, you know, what their experience has been, what their feedback is, and, you know, asking for guidance. I think, especially for saying like, oh, this type of thing that I did in class is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. How does that apply to research? What sorts of things should I be looking for? Those would be great questions to ask one of your professors, and they might point you to other people to talk to. And so I think that is huge, like both for applying to something like a BSMS program where you're talking about the specific people in the department who are then saying, should this person continue in the department to the master's, or doing an application more broadly to other programs.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I'm mindful of our time. I did just kind of as a last thing want to just, as you all are thinking about applications, to use your resources, both in your current faculty, in your career services, folks on your campuses. We're happy to help review statements like that, and so that you feel confident submitting them. And some programs will actually offer like an event where you can come and tour the campus and meet with faculty members once you've been admitted to their program, especially if you're, you know, not from close by. It might be really foreign campus to you. You might want to come in and meet with people individually before that. So those can be some opportunities to make sure you're going into the right program. Thank you so much to our panelists. I know you all want to, you know, with me, give them a round of applause because they've been so fantastic. Rosario is sharing a link for us to the Discord. We're going to begin the second panel in just a few minutes. So thank you again, panelists. We're really appreciative. And thank you to all of our students who've had such good questions tonight. We'll be starting again soon.